again, thank you all so much for coming this evening. Copperfields is always really thrilled to have some of the best local authors and talent within our stores. Tonight's definitely no exception. This evening we're going to have with us Theo Fightmaster and Sam Miller of the Sonoma Stompers, and also Stomper. Back again, Stomper. Baseball has been the national pastime for many decades, and in that time, a lot of sports can get a touch stale, and it's very difficult to see something new, exciting, and fresh in the venues. And I think that gentlemen we have here tonight have really done great strides in making an old, solid, traditional standby fresh and new, and doing something new with the sport. They can explain it much better than I can, so I'm going to just go right into it. So please help me in welcoming Sam Miller.
So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll introduce Theo, and then I'll talk for a little bit and read, and then we'll get some questions. But to start with, I think probably most people here know a little bit about the background of what we did last summer. And it started the summer before when I went out to a Stompers game as a baseball writer. I was writing for a site called Baseball Prospectus, and I didn't have anything to write about one day. So I went out to meet with Theo Fightmaster, who was the GM of the Sonoma Stompers, and I was just going to write a little piece about how you put together an independent league team. Most baseball teams that we think of in the baseball universe, their players are kind of assigned to them by, the Dodgers or the Giants or the Cardinals or whatever. But Theo had to put together his team from scratch. There was nobody feeding him players, and I was curious how he built a pretty good expansion franchise with whatever means. And so I went out and asked him how he did it, and I come from a background of being very into statistics and the whole Moneyball thing. And so I asked Theo if there was an opportunity to do that sort of stuff in independent league ball. And he said there probably was, but he didn't have any more hours in his day, he didn't have any more dollars in his budget, and the labor of it was prohibitive. And it sort of occurred to me right then that maybe we could do that for him. And so we pitched it to him about a week later and asked if he wanted me and my partner Ben Lindbergh, who also is at Baseball Prospectus, to basically run their baseball operations department for him. So he agreed because he really likes publicity. That's pretty much like what he exists for, is to get people to know that he's here and that his team is here. Because otherwise, the world might not notice. So we did that last summer. Ben Lindbergh and I did pretty much everything that you would do in a normal baseball operations department. We helped acquire players. We stole one player in sort of a heist. And we built a scouting department, and a lot of our scouts are actually here tonight. And so they would go out with us every night to some game that nobody was watching in Vallejo or Pittsburgh, and we would write down every pitch and try to build scouting reports just like they would have in the majors. And then we helped to use that to create new strategies that we hoped would be sort of interesting and new and would work. And so that's what we did. So that's the story that we told in this book. It's the story of that summer and of everywhere that it went sideways, and of how it ended up being about something much different than baseball stats, and how we kind of learned to love the game again, I guess. Seems like you should say that. So I'm gonna, I want to introduce a few people who were also part of this project. Some of them didn't know they were going to be at the time. So this is Theo. Theo, why don't you come up and stand over here?
For the whole time?
Like Christmas, at least for a minute. So this is Theo. Theo's been the GM for 2 years. This is his third year. And before that, he was actually a sports writer who got roped into running a baseball team. So he kind of knew what we were going through. Apparently this is how you get a foot in the door, is you just write sports. So why did you agree to this?
Originally, or to working with you?
To working with me and Ben.
Publicity and fame and the drama that comes with it.
Did you think that we would actually add anything to the team?
Yes, I thought that, I mean, you're being very kind, first of all. Thank you. Sam asked if I would, is there room for sabermetrics and analytics at this level? And I said, yeah, but if I had extra hands, I'd have them selling t-shirts. Because we need to survive as a business, we need to sustain. And
because he has a literally infinite supply of those Aiken Sacred t-shirts. It's literally infinite. Every time he sells one, 2 more pop up.
They breed, yeah. That's not true. We're like have 6 left. We've done a really good job. So I knew that you weren't going to sell t-shirts, you weren't going to sweep the grandstands, you weren't going to pour beer. You would drink it after the games once in a while. But I knew that you guys would be able to help us evolve as a franchise, and I would learn a lot. I would enjoy hanging out with you guys. You would bring me very good players. You would steal me very good players. You would get these people from Brett and Leland and Courtney and Noah and all these other people. I'm missing Eric also. He's here. That's very remarkable. You would bring people into the fold that, frankly, I wouldn't have the ability to reach. And now they're here and they like us and they wear our hats and they. Leland shows up to the office every day. I can't get rid of him. I'm here.
And calls me Ben. He still calls me Ben. All right. You want to sit down there?
I don't know. I mean, the podium has your name on it, so it's not that big.
Well, stay up here. Stay up here.
My mom wants a picture.
So 2 of the players that we were really, really lucky to have on the team last year, although luck is the residue of design or skill or something like that, right? Hard work. It's the residue of a lot of things. One of them is Daniel Baptista. He's number 44. Come up here. So Daniel had been
Smells good.
smelling good. Daniel had been trying to get Arlie's attention for a couple of years. Actually, he ambushed Theo in the parking lot at a Vallejo game one time, and
I took down his number.
and never did anything with it.
No, but that's a huge step.
Yeah.
Most guys, I just say sorry, and I was like, I don't know. I'm going to take his number down. I might feel bad for this kid.
So, but it didn't work out. It wasn't working out. I mean, it wasn't working out because Daniel didn't used to look like this. Daniel used to look like 3 of this put together. He was a lot bigger.
325.
Yeah, 325, which you do not see on a baseball field. It's just not a sport for 325. And so one day he hurt his knee really bad, and he was at Crossroads. And so he decided, oh, well, I guess I'll see what it's like when I'm 245. And he lost a ton of weight, and then he went to a tryout, an open tryout that we basically run to raise money. And
generate revenue.
And he was really, really good at the tryout, and we could all see it. And so chapter 4 of this book details the extraordinary lengths we went to cheat the rest of the league out of him. And I still remember the scariest moment of the whole season was driving home with you and trying to figure out how much trouble we were in. And telling you that worst case scenario we were probably going to get a big fine, and you telling me it would be worth it. And Baps was one of the best hitters in the league. He has the franchise record for the longest hitting streak, I think, still. Tim, is that right?
It's one less than Toronto. Sorry, buddy.
Nobody was going to fact check that.
Yes. I'm too much of a straight shooter. That's my bad.
And then, from what I hear, he showed up in spring training today for the first day and was hitting taters all over the place. Tim came into the office glowing and said, Baps has loft now. So I think that it might be a really big season for him. And then the other fine fellow we have is Sean Conroy. pitching at a little engineering school in upstate New York that absolutely nobody in the baseball world cared about. So even though he was just one of the best pitchers in all of college, he wasn't getting any attention at all, and he was basically done with his playing career. And we had a friend who helped us find him through algorithmic means, I guess. We had this sort of ingenious way of measuring college stats and finding the guys that the rest of the sport had missed. And we called Sean one day and asked if he wanted to play. And did you have to think about it? I mean, it was a long ways away, and we were paying you less than it cost to get here.
I was still in the middle of my senior college season, so I hadn't started looking at the teams yet. But it was great to be able to say yes relatively quickly. It probably took me a week to talk over with my family, but just not having to go to any of those open tryouts, you guys got me so early, I was able to say yes. So
yeah, and as you told me at one point, you don't do well in tryouts. You don't. Sean's really good because he can locate all his pitches. He has a very deceptive delivery, and he's really smart on the mound. And that just makes him really hard to hit. No matter how good the hitter is, he's smarter than that guy. And it doesn't always show up in tryouts because he doesn't throw quite as hard. He throws from a low arm slot, which is why it works, but he's not a guy who's going to light up radar guns. And when a scout sees what he's working with, if there's not a batter in the box, it's not quite so obvious. But I remember on opening night, he came out, he was our closer, and it was super obvious to everybody that we had found a really good ball player. And we had this spreadsheet that was going to identify very good ball players, we hoped. And it did, but we didn't know if it was going to identify good stories, and Sean was just such a big part of the team, on and off the field all season long, and he ends up, I would say, being the soul of the book, and much more so than me and Ben in a lot of places. So, and he's back too, and starting this year, hopefully. All right. You guys want to leave?
No.
So, you can go over So I want to. We have a lot of stories that didn't make it into the book, and so I want to give you guys maybe an exclusive. This is something that I thought would be in the book, and then it didn't. But it's a good story. It's a story that means a lot to me because it, in a lot of ways, is sort of the spiritual heart of the whole season. We had a guy on our team named Jerome Godsey, who was a lot older than the rest of the guys on our team. And Eric's now laughing. Eric's not sure which story I'm telling. That's why.
Terrified.
Yeah. So Jerome was and Theo can correct me on some of these details, maybe, but Jerome was long ago, 15 years ago, kind of a local hero. He pitched at Santa Rosa Junior College, and he was the all-time saves leader there as a relief pitcher. He's a really good pitcher. Little guy, little lefty. Not a draft prospect because he just doesn't look like a ball player, but really good pitcher. And then he goes to University of Oklahoma, which is a D1 school, big program. But he's their center fielder and their leadoff hitter. And he was really good there too. But again, he wasn't the kind of good that gets you noticed by scouts. He was what he would call the Brett Butler type. He was really patient. He would draw walks. He would steal bases. He was good in the outfield. And after his career ended, it just ended. Like, he didn't get drafted, and this was sort of before the indie ball boom of around the turn of the century, the turn of the last century. So his career just ends. And 15 years pass. He goes into mortgage broker or something. It was never quite clear to me what he did, but it was like one of those generic finance jobs.
Correct.
He worked at a bank, or something like that. And so, as I understand it, a few weeks before our season began, he was pitching in a Sunday men's league, which is basically like recreational, but pretty, good ball players, but old guys. Some of them aren't very good. Not all that serious. And he was pitching, and the catcher was our manager at the start of the year, a guy named Phelan Lentini. And Phelan's, just blown away by this guy's curveball. He says it's the first curveball he's been able to hear in a very long time. You can just hear it whistling in. And around that time, Jerome's dad died very suddenly, just out of nowhere, totally unexpected. And So Jerome decides at the age of 36 that he's going to finally chase this dream that he had never really pursued coming out of college. And so he tries out for me and Theo and Phelan one day, rainy day. Baptista hit against him. Not that well. He didn't do that well that day because Jerome was good.
He's knocking off some runs.
It's true, too. Yeah. And so we liked Jerome, and we brought him on. He was our pitching coach, even though he had less pitching experience than pretty much anyone on the team, because he was old, and so he was qualified to be a coach. And he pitched well, and he was a good relief arm for us. And the thing about Jerome is just that everybody's out there chasing a dream. And it's easy to just sort of lump all those dreams together and go, oh, well, they're all chasing dreams. And you get desensitized to it. It's just like, it's a dream, whatever, they're chasing it. We're all chasing a dream. But as you get to know the guys on the team, they all have very different, very unique dreams. Everybody's dream is totally different. They've all been thwarted for a different reason. They're all trying to do something different in the sport. And so playing a season or sitting in a dugout for a season with these 22 different guys was really a chance to hear 22 different versions, 22 different, very different dreams. And every single one of them is inspiring, and you end up really rooting hard for all of them. And so I just really like that. I mean, there's so much color within the Major League roster that you never get a chance to see. And Ben and I, for one summer, got to sit in the dugout and see it. It was amazing. So we had a really good time. All right, so can I read something?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read something from Spring Training. Is that okay? All right. So I'm going to read something from Spring Training, and the only two things you need to know about this is, one, there was a guy named Jeff Conley who on the first night of spring training, a bunch of the guys went downtown to the bars. And Jeff Conley, in literally his first day as a professional baseball player, thinks, well, this is a chip that's too good not to cash in. So he goes to some girl in the bar. He says, I'm the ace of the Sonoma Stompers. I'm going to start opening day, which is not true. None of us can see a pitch, and he was a rookie and all that. But he said it, and everybody made fun of him for it. So you need to know that. The other thing you need to know is that. Clubhouse chemistry is this huge mythological thing in baseball where it sometimes takes on just this huge perceived value, and probably for good reason, but it also is misapplied in a lot of cases. It's very easy to basically use chemistry to make whatever point you want to make about whatever player or team and say that they choked because they had bad chemistry, or they were upstarts because they had good chemistry, and really it's complicated. And so a year before this project, I had written a long feature in ESPN magazine about the idea of quantifying chemistry, of using sabermetrics to measure or even engineer clubhouse chemistry, and what kind of academics in other fields like workplace politics and things like that were doing on the subject outside of a baseball context. And so there was an academic at the University of Santa Clara who had done a lot of work on this. Her name was Katerina Bezrukova. So you'll hear Bezrukova's name in here, and you'll hear Jeff Conley's name. So I'm going to start reading now. What we think of as chemistry pervades every action. At the kickoff banquet, Theo, who heard about Jeff Conley and his boast to the girl at the bar, introduces the rookie lefty as our opening night starter, and everybody laughs because everybody has already heard about big league Jeff Conley, even before most of them have met him. What we don't know is whether this faux pas matters. Big league, in quotation marks, is by far the most common insult at this level of baseball. Fired off anytime a guy acts like he's bigger than his stage. But sometimes big league is amusing. Paul Hosdovic quickly gets the nickname Big League because of, among other things, his socks, which literally say Major League Baseball on them. But Paul is actually humble and self-effacing, and he carries equipment like a rookie is supposed to. Big League, in Paul's case, is forgiven. But sometimes Big League is doom, like Colin Forgey, who is assigned a host family with Sean Conroy, and he starts asking for a new host family assignment on day one of spring training. Even though he's living in a mansion with a personal chef who cooked him the best breakfast of his life, he's oblivious to the fact that his host parents are good friends with the owner and that they're hosting him and Sean as a friendly favor. He's big league and he never recovers. Everything he does this week goes through the big league filter. He wants to shag fly balls in center field instead of left, big league. He smacks his glove angrily when an infielder cuts off his throw home, big league. He shows a hint of disappointment that a post-workout batting practice is just soft toss, not live pitching. That's big league. He's all but cut by the end of that opening night banquet because you can't have big league in your clubhouse, bro. You can't have cancers either. Phelan tells us this over and over, and this often means you can't have rookies. Rookies, he tells us, don't act the right way. They have no feel, which is another fatal insult. No feel. The inability to read a room and act right. The infielder who started to throw his glove in frustration after an error. The kid who showed naked pictures of his girlfriend on the first day of camp. The one who asked whether a team dinner was mandatory. No feel. Veterans have feel, which is why Phelan has brought in the two guys he played with, second baseman Sergio Miranda and shortstop Jared Mochizuki. Both have affiliated experience. Miranda's extensive and recent, and Moch's just a blink 5 years ago. Phelan is so adamant that these two friends have roster spots that he actually pays Mochizuki an extra couple $100 a month out of his own salary and under the table to entice him to Sonoma for the summer. And it's obvious in spring training that these two do know how to carry themselves on the field. They lead the infield drills, and they give younger guys batting tips. They're well coached. They turn double plays quicker than anybody. They're also friends with the manager, though, and we realize, too late, that in the Bezrukova model of assessing a team, they're creating a demographic cluster that can form fault lines. Those are Bezrukova academic phrases. At this point, we're so impressed by the complexity of chemistry that we don't put enough faith in Bezrukova's research. We feel like we've discovered a colony of ants that seem to be moving in totally random ways, only to reveal an elaborate and brilliant pattern. Like in the first few moments of spring training, the first 5 minutes of the first day, when there's nearly a fist fight. One of the new players, Isaac Winrick, with an angry beard and a hard stare, is needling one of our returnees, Eric Schwieger. Isaac's poking his back, telling Eric there's some dirt on it. There's no dirt on it, and Eric is ignoring him with his head down in intense non-amusement. Finally, our veteran cleanup hitter, Joel Carranza, turns around and tells Isaac to shut it down. Isaac stares in disbelief, torn between saving face and cutting his losses. Serious, Joel tells him, assuring Isaac that he is very definitely in the wrong here. He doesn't like it. He doesn't want you to do that, so stop. The bleachers, having been alive with chatter, are now silent. We all stare at Isaac. There's no way out of this situation except escalation, and I expect an overturned table, a shouting match, a punch or two. But Isaac takes a breath, like a preschooler remembering his mantra. When you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. He absorbs the moment of shame, and eventually the chatter comes back. Our team's chemistry is already a disaster from 5 minutes in, except that I've misread this situation entirely. I saw an extremely petty situation that turned into something tense and serious, where a new player stepped on the toes of the incumbents who stood up for each other, but not for the outsider. But I missed the real story. A leader emerged in Joel. An extremely petty situation was nipped before it could become more. Our new catcher chose not to elevate and showed that it was okay to wear a little bit of shame after an overstep. Within an hour, it's clear that Isaac and Eric are also leaders on this team. And as Isaac catches Eric that day, there's no lingering tension. Chemistry is complicated, which makes it all the more intimidating to think about how Ben and I are going to be part of it. All right, that's the program. So you're going to ask questions now. And if you want to ask questions for me, you can. If you want to ask questions for any of them, you can. Eric will not. If you want to ask any questions for our scouts, they're here. They can tell you, whether Danny Gonzalez could hit an inside fastball on 0-2. Maybe. So, yeah.
So I think I saw on Twitter the other day that there was a player that was signed by the Milwaukee Brewers.
There was. Yeah. So that is Santos Saldivar, and Santos was signed the same way that we found Sean. He was a name on a spreadsheet. We had never seen him. We didn't know anything about him. He jumped out at us because his stats were just really great in college. And we have a sort of a general philosophy that if you're good at baseball, you're good at baseball. And it really shows through in the numbers. We don't have to worry about how good you're going to be in 7 years like a major league team does. And so while they might find a reason not to draft you because they think, well, you're not going to grow enough, you're never going to be fast enough to play in the majors, we don't really have to worry about that. All we have to know is, can you play right now? So Santos was really good. He played at Southern University in Louisiana, and he absolutely would have been drafted. He probably would have been drafted in the top 10 or 15 rounds, except that he's 5'7", maybe 5'6". He might say 5'8", but major leagues just generally have a real bias against short pitchers, especially short right-handers, and there's good reason for that. It's not, it's super, super unfair, but it makes sense. And so he got completely overlooked. He was retired. He was playing in a men's league, just like Jerome Gotze, but he wasn't even pitching. He was playing third base. He was just done. And so we called him up, convinced him to come out of retirement for us, and he was really great. And so about a week ago, we know a guy who works for the Brewers, and he emailed Ben to tell him that he read our book and he really loved it. And Ben said, well, normally in this situation when someone tells us that, I say, well, can you go leave an Amazon review? But since it's you, can you sign Santos? And he sort of, it was just a joke. Ben didn't really, we told people about a lot of these guys. But we kind of, I don't know how serious Ben was. Maybe he was half serious. And so he says, well, send me what you got. And so we sent him all this video that we had on him from the season. And then we were able to send him what's called PitchFX data. So PitchFX, I don't know if you know, I don't know if everybody knows about PitchFX, but Major League stadiums all have this really complicated camera system where they have 3 cameras, one in center field and one basically down each line, and they triangulate so that they can track the ball every thousandth of an inch that it travels from the pitcher's hand to the plate. And so it can tell you precisely how fast it was, how many times it spinned, how much it moved, and in what direction, and where it was located. So the strike zone box that you see on televised games, that's PitchFX. But teams use it, and analysts like me use it to evaluate players and suss out trends. So they installed that at Arnold Field for us as a favor. Because we kind of knew them and they thought that it sounded like a fun project. All we had to do was spend $800 on a cherry picker to get the guy up there to put the cameras up. And so we got this state-of-the-art camera system and all the data that came with it. And that was fun to have, and we used it. But where it really turned out to be valuable was with Santos, because they can't scout Santos. They're not going to send a scout out to Sonoma to scout one 23-year-old indie ball pitcher. And so he would normally never be able to get looked at, but PitchFX data essentially is giving them perfect scouting reports that they can compare to their own pitchers in their own organization. So they were able to look at it and see exactly how good he was. They could say, wow, his fastball moves more than this guy's, it's harder than this guy's, and his breaking ball does this. And that's as good as a scouting report. And so they saw that, and they saw this great kind of matrix numbers in front of them, and they said sure. And they took 12 hours basically from first mention to them signing him. And now he's in Arizona. He flew out this morning.
He was here last night.
Yeah, he was.
He was here last night.
He was here last night. Yeah.
Yes, he was.
It was a tough flight for him. I haven't talked to him. Yeah.
What was your number one anxiety going into it? And then what was your number one anxiety once the book was at the printers and you couldn't do anything to change it?
Okay, well, the number one anxiety going into it was just that I have, we've all failed at various points in our lives. We all know we're very capable of it. And by the time spring training started, I was convinced that we had already failed. Like I thought we're already done. We haven't done enough prep. We don't have enough lined up. We don't have enough good ideas. We've already, blown our relationship with this guy or that guy. And it really felt almost like sunk cost going in. I thought we should just punt. But we were worried about how, really the easy answer is we were worried about how the players were going to deal with us. Yeah. And it wasn't so much that we were expecting open revolt or anything like that. I don't think that all players really do that. They're good soldiers. It was basically two things. One, I didn't want to be around 22 guys who hated me for 3 months. I don't have that in me. I need to have good positive relationships in my life. I can't have a lot of hostility. Can't handle it. And so I really needed them to like me, and I knew that was an obstacle in one sense. I also needed to be strong enough to not be liked, but the other thing is that we needed them to be 100% bought in on whatever they were doing. They're not elite athletes if they're operating at 95%. And so we were going to be asking them to do things that might be unusual to them, or to invest in some of these things that we were putting in front of them. And I knew they weren't going to revolt or say no or anything like that. But if they just sort of kind of go along with it, they lose that thing that makes them great, which is a level of drive and ambition that most people don't have. So I was worried about blowing that. After we published, that's where you get sued, I guess. I don't know. I mean, you never know what's gonna piss people off.
Were you concerned about the depictions of some of the players?
I mean, I wasn't too concerned because I really felt like these guys are professional baseball players, and we really wanted to treat their careers with the respect that entails. We didn't want to treat them as, some guys playing community baseball somewhere. We wanted to treat them like major leaguers for a season, and that meant getting them scouting reports, putting full effort into everything we gave them, getting them the Pitch FX cameras, getting them equipment, and really running the team like it would be run as a major league organization. And so part of that then means assessing them, just as we would assess, Mike Trout or Clayton Kershaw or any other baseball player. And when they do something wrong, you don't flinch. They're there. They go out there every day. They perform. Sometimes they drop the ball and they get booed, but they do it because sometimes they hit a walk-off home run and they all mob them. So I wasn't too worried. I want everybody to be happy, and so I know that, in my experience as a journalist, you write the softest puff piece in the world, and they're still that's not really me. I don't really like how you portray me. It's just really hard to portray somebody. It's like hearing your own voice on an answering machine. You're like, is that me? Really? It doesn't sound right. So I know, I'm sure that you could not. It's over the top, in love with Sean, and I'm sure Sean is still there's probably words where he's he would have edited that. So, and of course it's not like that. Not everybody's Sean. We had a lot of fights. We had some tough days. Yeah. So, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you read it?
I have read it.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Should I be worried?
Could be sued.
No, some of the dudes are friends, and that's just where it is.
The thing that's I feel sort of sympathy for everybody is that it's not necessarily fair that we got to tell their story instead of them. I feel for instance, there are conversations where we're having tense conversations with our manager, and because I'm the one telling the story, right. It's it sort of seems he's the villain, because there's that sort of natural dramatic conflict in it. And I feel like if he wrote the book, it would be exactly the same, but it would be just it being in his narrative voice, you'd read it totally differently. I mean, there's a scene where our manager stomps out, and he's yelling about how bush league we are as he walks out. And yeah, it looks like he's, you're like, geez, this guy's really off the rails, right? But to him, he's I showed them, he would tell it the same way, except it would be yeah, I didn't even listen to those guys. He'd be proud of that. Yeah. I mean, the other thing, this is kind of naive, but I really like people. I even like the people that, get in my way sometimes. And I like I have a lot of like sympathy for the brokenness that is us all. And so because I like them, I'm sometimes I don't see how it plays, because like to me I'm just being honest and I'm kind of affectionate about their warts and all. But of course, I can't expect everybody to pick up on that giant, subtle, subtextual love that I feel, because it doesn't really show through. It's very naive, I know. I wish I hadn't even told you that.
Yeah. First of all, Faye already texted you saying you were going to be the first chapter of this book, right?
We're waiting for his book. He told me about his book a number of times, even in the good days. He told me, he's going to write a book. He's got a buddy who told him his life. I mean, he's had a very interesting career. I'd love to read his book.
So how much of this book did you have to write after the season was over?
All of it.
Yeah. So how did you try as a writer to get back into the mindset of those days? Was it just like trying to remember stories of different days or anything?
Well, we had a lot of the job itself required a lot of written communication, especially because Ben's not a real chatty guy, but he's a good emailer, he's a good G-chatter, he's a good texter. So we had a ton of these conversations that just were already in various communications, and then we were scouting every game and taking these insanely detailed notes about everything that had happened. So we had a real clear record of everything, and as soon as you pick up like a sheet of paper that is a scouting report, like it immediately puts you back in that place. A lot of times there would be little like annotations and little notes within it. So when we went into it, we had this idea that we were going to write as we go. We were going to like journal, and because we had to turn it around really fast. The season ended September 1st, we had to submit it on December 15th, and we were both going back to our real jobs, and the playoffs were starting, and I was editing another book at the same time, the Baseball Prospectus Annual, and so we thought we've got to have the book like half written by the time the season ends, and we didn't have a single word, like we hadn't even thought about it, we hadn't structured it or organized it, but we did have like stacks and stacks and stacks of records of what we had done. I mean, to some degree, the texts that are in there, it's just a crutch. Like we were writing so fast, we were like just dump it in the document.
One of the themes of the book is an imbalance of resources at the independent level compared to major league level, and that could be something like technology or talented players. And early on in the season, you guys tried to balance that by getting pitch effects and bats and all that, those sort of things. Scouting players using sabermetrics the way a major league team might. But throughout the season, were there certain resources that you guys still couldn't get access to, and that frustrated you?
I don't know if there were any that we couldn't get access to, like in physical form. I mean, I know like Ben tried to get us a free radar gun, but that was just like to save a little money. We just bought one. I think pretty much. There were a couple of things that early on fell through. Like at one point we were trying to get this, it's like this health sciences wearable technology that tracks your body, and then every player, like it says that it can predict injuries. And I went down to their office and they gave me a demo and everything. And so normally at that point we go, great, sounds fun, it'll really add to this project. And they go, sure, here you go. But this time they're like, I mean, we'd be happy to give it to you, but I'm just going to be honest, like, you're way stretched thin on all of this. You're never going to use this. You're never going to figure it out. And unless you're willing to hire a trainer to run it for you, it's just a total waste of your time and ours. So, like, if you want, but we agreed. And it really was the case that 2 people wasn't enough, 2 people plus a scouting department wasn't enough. We really needed more people. I mean, that's why major league organizations are hundreds of people. You just end up getting bogged down in these like really little IT problems that take 2 days to fix. And so, like, we had this thing called a Modus sleeve, and a Modus sleeve is one of my, I love it. It's one of the coolest things in the sport right now. It's this sleeve that you wear, and it actually isn't even a sleeve that you wear. It's a little sensor that you just tuck into your, I think you just tuck it into your compressor, right?
It was a special sleeve.
Compression sleeve? Okay. Yeah, so it's a compression sleeve though. So you just replace your compression sleeve with this one. And it's got this sensor, and it does a lot of things, but it measures all the strain that you're putting on your arm. So if you really want to know if a pitcher is getting tired, this thing can tell you in real time if his motion is changing in microscopic ways that you would never be able to see with your own eyes. And instead of just going, well, he's thrown 100 pitches, that's how many we've decided is a lot, it's actually measuring the torque on each pitch because a slider uses a lot more torque than a changeup, and a harder fastball uses more than a slower fastball. So maybe in one start, 70 pitches is more strain than 110. So, I love this technology. I think it's going to completely change the game. And they gave us some sleeves, and we, they're basically still in a box somewhere because we were just too busy, and we couldn't. It would have taken us, a week to trial them and to learn how to use them and to get people to use them in practice, and another week to have one guy wear them, and by the time the 3 months was over, we didn't get them. So I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities just because we ran into the same problems that Theo always runs into. Not enough hours in the day. And you wore one a little. Did you get anything out of it? We never. No one ever wore it. Yeah, and I feel I'm so embarrassed too because this company gave them to us, and I really like it, and I wanted it. I had my chance. There were a lot of things that I thought that we would get to. The big thing that I really wanted to get to that I thought would be really fun and is kind of unusual and would have made for great visuals is I wanted to work with cognitive scientists to devise a crowd action that would most disrupt the opposing pitcher. Because, with free throw shooters, everybody stands behind the backboard. And so cognitive scientists will tell you that actually is, it just becomes white noise, and it does nothing to the shooter. And in fact, it's almost soothing, and if you really wanted to mess with them, you get everybody to go silent. You get the whole arena to just go dead silent. And that was much more intimidating. And so we wanted to figure out what kind of pattern of sound and visuals we could get the people behind home plate to do to really mess with them. And so I just think that could have really been I feel like that could have made left a mark on the sport. Right? And who wouldn't want to do that? If you were a fan and you could be part of something like that, it seems like it'd be really fun. If the season were 14 months long, we probably would have gotten to it.
You can still do that.
You should.
Absolutely.
Yes. I'm hoping you're a cognitive scientist and you're volunteering.
The graveyard is littered with independent baseball teams. We had the Crushers here for many years.
Yeah.
And they would belly up.
Yeah.
Or the league would belly up. And then I think they had the Golden League around here as well. And so do you think sabermetrics will save or could save independent baseball?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't know that I see how it would.
But it was a differentiation for the Stompers.
Yeah, the thing is that it's just totally impossible to replicate without it being a project that we got so much free help on. This year, they're not going to have the cameras.
It would probably bankrupt them quicker if we tried to do all the things.
And so, in a weird way, it could come back. But right now, the data that baseball teams and baseball analysts are using is getting more and more expensive. It's getting more and more precise. And those 3 cameras that I told you about, that's not even enough anymore. Now they've got this thing called StatCast, which uses a combination of those cameras and Doppler technology. And so now you can know everything. If the base runner's lead goes from 12.17 feet to 12.172 feet, now they know that. And it's every action, every movement, the seagulls on the field, they have it all. You can see on a home run, you can see what the umpires did for the entire play, their movement and how fast they move. And all that is so much more expensive than what, with Moneyball, the thing that made Moneyball so kind of easy for the A's and for the writers who were writing at the time, it was basically just taking your newspaper box scores and applying a little common sense. Now, you really have to generate this data, and the I mean, we're talking like terabytes for every inning, or at least every game. I read this recently, the first day that StatCast was in a Major League game, somebody said that 99% of all the data that had ever been created for the Major Leagues was in that one game. Like, it dwarfed all the data from the previous 150 years. And so for independent league teams, it's really going to be like almost impossible to do any of that, which is kind of a shame, and we bemoan it. I do think that independent leagues are really healthier than they've ever been, and they're going to get healthier. Last year there were leagues in the Pacific Northwest and the Ozarks and the East Coast that all started and folded within a week. And you could look at that and go, well, geez, boy, it's never been tougher to be an independent league team, except that so many people are trying, and I think that they're trying because there's a lot of appetite for it. The draft used to be 60 rounds, but really was unlimited. You could draft until people quit drafting. And then a few years ago, they cut it down to 40. And so now there's a lot of really good players that don't get drafted. And there's fewer minor league teams in the affiliated leagues. And these guys got to go somewhere. And so there's a lot more major league teams that are scouting independent leagues. You're getting hot, aren't you? So there's a lot more teams that are scouting them, and there's more players getting picked up. The Diamondbacks signed 30 guys out of independent leagues in 2014 alone. So it really is much more a part of the baseball ecosystem than it ever used to be, but it's very much the little cousin of it.
Yeah. As far as the data goes, you have scouts out there collecting this special data that most other independent leagues don't get. How hard was it, and was the absorption level, I guess the big question I'm asking, was the absorption level what you expected from the players? Did they gravitate to these videos and to these numbers and the things that you were offering to them? How hard was it to feed them, to digest it? And I mean, really, I just kind of want to ask you guys, like, how enticing was that information? And did it change from the beginning of the year to the end? How valuable you found that to be?
I feel like the first half of the season, I should have took advantage more. And I think I told you toward the end of the year, because the second half I did, and I felt like I could better predict pitches that were coming in certain situations because I seen how they were pitching in previously. So, yeah, I just wish I would have taken more advantage the first half.
So it grew. You think, not just with you, maybe with the team as well?
Maybe me individually, yes, I can. I don't know about the rest of the team. I haven't asked them.
And from a pitcher's perspective?
Personally, for the first half, I was mainly looking at my own mechanics and, okay, in this inning I didn't feel as good. Can I see anything I did differently? And more in the second half, once I started to see the same hitters over and over again, I'd be looking at not only what I'm doing, but what they're doing. Just because there's 3 other teams in the league, and it's more important to be able to recognize every hitter individually. Their strengths and weaknesses. So it's great to have.
They're being very nice. The scouting reports in the first half sucked. They're really like we had to learn how to do it right because you go up there and I mean the way that we envision it is okay. So you want to figure out what the pitcher's most likely to throw on each count, more or less. But there's like 9 or 10 different counts, and the hitter goes up there. He's not going to be able to remember all this. He's not going to certainly remember, well, he's not going to remember any of it if you give him too much, but like if you're telling him 65% sliders and 25% changeups, like that's too much. And so we really had to figure out a way to get the most important information as simple as possible. And I think that we got a lot better at that, and we got a lot better because the players were telling us what they wanted to hear and what was working. And toward the end, I felt like it was pretty useful. I was surprised that the video that we were collecting, we videotaped every game, the ones that we were in and the ones that we were not in. And then we had this software that could chop the video up so that every play was basically like, I don't know how to put this. If you wanted to see the 2-2 pitch in your at-bat, you could just see the 2-2 pitch. And if you want to watch the guy's entire start, you could watch it all, but all the junk in between was gone, so it would only take 5 minutes and you can see every pitch. And if you wanted to see all of that guy's 2-1 changeups, you could see him played. And so it chopped them all up and made them really easy to sort and gather. And so we thought that was this incredible resource. Like you've got that day's pitcher, and you can watch anything you want. You can watch 100 of his curveballs in a row, or you can watch his last start, or you can see how he faced other right-handed batters. You can see him from behind the plate and from behind center field. And we just nobody ever wanted to see that unless it was them batting. They all wanted to see their own video. So it'd be like, well, have I faced him? Let me see those. And otherwise, nothing. And so I was sort of surprised that, like, you guys just weren't interested in seeing them pitch against other people. Yeah, and it was really because, and even, they didn't even want to see it if it was against them unless they had hits, which I totally get. Like, psychologically, that makes sense. They didn't want to see themselves get beat by the guy. I mean, you can make the case that we should all be learning from our mistakes, and that's how you get better, and like, that's how he's probably going to attack you. And probably logically, those are the events you should be watching, but they just wanted to get in this zone where they own the guy. They're like, show me the hits, show me the hits. But can I say one more thing? The big breakthrough, I think, for our scouting reports for our pitchers was when we got the scouting report for each hitter down to 2 words. We just got it down to in or spin. And if it was in, it was that they can't hit hard velocity inside. Their bat's not quick enough. And if it was spin, they can't hit breaking balls away. And pretty much every hitter in baseball, unless he's a superstar, is pretty weak on one of them. And maybe strong on the other, but definitely weak on one or the other. And so Andrew Parker is like, that's all I need to know about these guys. You just tell me in or spin, because everything I need to know about him as a hitter is probably going to be on those 2 things. Like, it'll tell me what his swing is like, what he's susceptible for, and how much I should load up on different pitches. And that was really a lot easier for us to do. So I was very grateful. All right. Yes.
So I wanted to ask you about the speech that you weren't able to give time-wise, the friendship speech. Because you seem here like a very natural public speaker, and I had a 2-part question. I wanted to ask, one, as a kid on sports teams, were you the guy to do that, to give that? And then 2, if you would give us a little snippet of it.
I will, the second question, I will not. I did last night at the team banquet after it was cleared out. There were about 10 people left, and some sake bombs had been disappeared. I'm saying, if you want to run out. And frankly, the speech was too long. I now realize it was too long. It needed to get a workshop. If I delivered it, then the second one would have been good. But anyway, I was not. I don't like the anticipation of speaking. So early on in my career, I was the encouraging encouraging chatter. Like, I'd be the guy who'd be like, "Come on, guys, we gotta want it to win it, and we want it more." And then, like, I'd get the chant going. But then that was when I was about 10. And when you're 10, if you can play baseball, like, you have some skills, then it's okay if you're tiny. But the older you get, the more you need to be strong. You need to have strength. And I was really weak. I was just really a weak child. Like, the weakest child. And so the worse I got, the more I felt like it just wasn't my place to talk. And I mean, I don't know. In the book, I think my neurosis about that comes through. I mean, I still have that baggage when we went to spring training. I still definitely felt like I had to defer to the cool kids who can play baseball really well. And it was really important for Ben and I to get over that. And I mean, we got over it mainly because the guys were really good. And Sean and Paul and Andrew Parker and Tommy Lyons and a few others really made it so that it was a welcome place. Cool. Yeah.
I'm curious about the logistics between you and Ben, with him domiciled on the East Coast and you here, and at some point you had to have the conversation, he's going to come out here and live for the summer, and then that had to translate to your working relationship and writing it afterwards. Could you speak a little about that?
He, when we originally actually had this idea to maybe run a team, it first came up in a conversation that we were having with a commissioner of an upstart league in the Northeast, and that league never got off the ground, never played a game, so that didn't ever happen. But we were thinking about actually having me move out for the summer and having Baseball Prospectus as a whole company run the team, and we would like have this. We hadn't really figured out the logistics, but we were gonna get like a house, and we would have like everybody come in and use their expertise. But it didn't work out, and it probably wouldn't have worked out because I have a young daughter, and I had to take her to preschool every day this summer, and so Ben was, I think, perfectly fine coming out for the summer. I think he was happy to move out to California for. I mean, he's lived in Manhattan his whole life. He never got it. He was really excited to get a driver's license because he's never driven. And so when he flew out here, he studied for his driver's test the entire way. And as we were driving up, I quiz him, and he would I crossed the double yellow line, and he's like, "You can't do that."
Oh my God, that's the
best. He was too. I think he got scared. Or actually, okay, I'm gonna rephrase. I don't think he got scared. I think that it was the same. It was the bandwidth thing again. He needed to practice driving, and he just could never find the time to practice. And so a week became a month, and he just got used to not driving. And so then he ended up. That was his weird crowd noise experiment. Was learning how to drive, and he failed. So yes, but he got he rented a cottage that was a block from the park, and that was kind of our home base. And so then I would commute up from the peninsula every day, and then we would just stay there. And it was definitely a grind. It was hard work every day, coordinating it. But you want it to be a grind. Like the grind is a character in baseball. The fatigue that everybody starts to feel midway through the season is very much how you know that you're doing it and how you know that you're really there. And everybody by August is just so exhausted and simultaneously terrified the season is going to end and desperate for it to end because you just can't go another day. And the travel was part of that for us. Writing, we just wrote. We didn't really have a coordination. He wrote a chapter and then I wrote a chapter. And we wrote really fast. We didn't even have time to think about it.
So your editor helped out then?
The editor was very nice. The editor, yeah, he helped, but he let us get away with a lot too. I mean, we had to turn it in 3.5 months after the season ended, and then we had to turn it around in a month. It was out the door a month after that. It was being printed a month after that. So then the entire second draft, including the editors reading it and sending us his notes back and his changes back, and then us responding to those, that all had to be done in a month too, which was actually even harder than the writing. So, but you know, you do it on computers, and you talk to each other when you're doing it. That's about it. Yeah.
So if you had one more season, are there any particular players you'd go after, or something you realize that like you kind of admit in the book that you realize way too late that everybody's a right-handed pitcher? Mm-hmm. You know, would you sign a whole roster of righty matchers or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there'd be a lot of advantages to a second season. The big disadvantage of doing it the way we did it is that we basically came in, and in spring training we went up to describe what we were doing to everybody, and we said, well, we're really big on data, so we're not going to make a bunch of crazy decisions until we have the data. You can trust us. We're going to be responsible. That was our promise to them, is that we're going to be really responsible. We're not going to ask you to do a weird thing until we're sure that it's going to work. But we had no data at all on day one, and it took a long time just to get anything worth having. The right-handed pitchers thing, we didn't. Well, because we're dumb, we didn't figure that out. But for a lot of things that we noticed about the league that made the league really interesting, we couldn't figure that out until it was already getting kind of late in the season. So it'd be great to show up and be able to start spring training with this in mind. Okay. I think that we felt like players who predated us, we were still kind of on eggshells pretty well into the season because it was their territory, and as Ben put it, they knew we were only passing through. They understood that Ben and I weren't really permanent parts of the scenery. So if we went back again, I think we'd be a lot more confident with players because now we be the ones who are the incumbents. I mean, really, like what I just said about rookies not having feel. Like we were rookies, and we hadn't done management before. We had never been around a baseball team before, and we were learning it all as we went. And by the end of the season, we weren't rookies anymore. So having that confidence would be different. We really want to figure out why. Well, we really want to figure out why the spreadsheet didn't work for hitters, and I think we know. And I don't know if we have a solution for it. But I mean, one thing is that the difference between wood bats and metal bats turns out to be really, really big. Like, it's just about the swing. It's just different swings work for both, and you really do need to be able to scout the swing to some degree. But with a pitcher is a pitcher is a pitcher, no matter who he's pitching to. Wow, a pitcher's a pitcher's a pitcher.
Oh my God.
Especially if he's the closer. But I mean, a pitcher, if he throws 92, it doesn't matter whether he's facing a major leaguer or high school kid. He throws 92, you can see it. But a hitter, you really need to see how he reacts against good pitching. So, for like Sean was a great pitcher. He didn't face many good hitters, but he was still a great pitcher, and we can see that. But for a hitter in Sean's league, he would never have seen a guy like Max Beatty at any point, or he never would have seen a guy like Santos at any point. And so he's never really been tested. So that's part of it. The other thing is that we were getting hitters a month after their seasons ended, and rust really affects hitters a lot. And so some guys started slow. Anyway, I think that we probably would have to figure out hitters. And I think they have really good hitters this year now that we're gone, because they got smart and they went to the Pecos League. There's this league basically below ours. The Pecos League is crazy. Like they scored 9 runs a game. Both teams scored 9 runs a game. It's ridiculous. It's elevated. It's dry. They play on these community parks that are 330 to dead center field. And there are literally teams that average 11 runs a game. And so we would get, we'd be looking at players, and you'd be like, wow, he's hitting 560. And then you look at the rest of the team, it's like, oh, everybody's hitting 560. And so we didn't know how to deal with that. We didn't figure those out. We didn't figure out how to control for those. And if we had been coming back this year, we would have spent about a month really diving into Pecos League stats and figuring out how to adjust them. And we wouldn't just give up on players because they played in the Pecos. That was definitely a mistake that we made. And so Theo went and got some Pecos League hitters, and they hit today, and they were apparently, from what I hear, awesome.
We had some before you were here too. Joel
was Pecos League, yeah. Bax was Pecos League for like a week.
Doesn't count.
Hit 47.
Like 2 series.
Yeah. 31 at bats. Yeah.
So between you and Ben, the relationship and running the team and putting the book together, what were disagreements that you guys had, and how did you handle it?
I look at every problem as a philosophical conundrum worth talking about for 3.5 hours. Ben knows that. And Ben sees it as an obstacle. And so I think Ben thought every time that we had something that needed to be fixed, Ben thought, well, at least Sam's on my side. And then we go to do something, and I go, now wait. Let's think about this. And so I think he was really frustrated with me. And I was really frustrated with him because he doesn't talk at all. And it feels weird to be in the presence of somebody for hours and hours, and they just won't talk to you, no matter what.
You guys talk every day.
We talk every day because he's playing a character like that. He had to. I mean, have you heard the early episodes? It's really weird. He knows that he has to talk because it's a talking show. But he won't talk. He just won't talk to you in person. So, am I wrong? I'm pretty much right?
He talks to me a lot.
Hey, he'll play a lot of Smash Brothers.
It might be me.
I think it's you, Sam.
It could be. I mean, if we talked for an hour every day for the podcast, and maybe he was just sick of hearing what I sounded like. It would make sense too. But I would read that as non-engagement. Or I'd read it as not, him not listening or not being as focused or whatever as I was. And really, it was just that's his communication style. When we're on GChat, he's great. And normally we don't ever we met once before this season started. We met one time 3 years ago, and I have told this story, but the first time we met, we went to a Yankees game, and we sat in the press box side by side. It was the first time we met. He had been my boss for 4 months. We worked, electronically together every day. But we met for the first time in person. We sit and we watch this Yankees game, and he doesn't say a word for 3 hours. He doesn't say a single word. And then the game ends, he's like, I'm going to go find my mom. And he that was it. And so, just really mismatched communication styles. And he was a lot. The other thing is, to me, the book was going perfectly. From the day that Baps happened, I'm like, this book is awesome. The story is unfolding in a way that I didn't see it going, but I could see all of the drama was just, it was there, it was perfect, and it was great, and the characters were great. And Ben's like, we need to have weird stuff. There's not enough weird stuff. Because we had sold this book to the publisher as and then we're going to run this experiment, and then we're going to try that. And he's like, we're not doing that stuff. And I said, we will, let's just talk first. And so we had a little bit different ideas about what the book needed to have. And I just wanted to let it take care of itself. And he wanted to have, more robots. I remember, just one more thing, but I remember early on when we were having disputes about how Sean was being used. I think it was probably about that. It might have been anything though. It might have been that we were sacrifice bunting too much. In fact, I think it was that he didn't like that we had sacrifice bunted a few times, and both of us hate sacrifice bunts. It's a waste of an out. In almost all cases, it's counterproductive, and it's sort of embarrassing to run a team that's sacrifice bunted. We were a little ashamed that our friends were like, "Oh, you guys are bunting," and so Ben's like, "Well, we should tell them to stop sacrifice bunting. We should just tell them we don't do that." And I said, yeah, but then we're gonna if we're gonna pick fights, we should pick fights over things that really matter. We could tell them to not sacrifice bunt, but what's interesting about that? This is the team that quit sacrifice bunting. There's not really much you can do. It's not really anything you can study or that's gonna have some impact on the sport as a whole. And so I said, just let them bunt. It doesn't matter. Let them have a weird lineup. I don't care if the lineup's not optimized. Just, we'll fight for the big stuff. And I think Ben was absolutely right that we should have acted early on. If we had said no sacrifice bunts, and if we had said this lineup's stupid, the lineup's going to be this instead, then that sort of role would have built, and our authority would have grown. I was worried about depleting it. And I was 100% wrong. I mean, in that sense, Ben can lord that over me for a really long time because I was completely wrong. Sorry. Yeah. Yes.
So one part of the book you talk about how even if you guys win the league or whatever, your life's not going to change much for the better, but the losing is just killing you. And you write about how losing is. There's an opportunity cost to it. And so that page really read like a fan. As a sports fan, as a Giants fan, it's oh man, that's exactly how I feel. And I just turn it off because it's too much. So you're an analyst. So are you a fan at all? And if not, was running the Stompers a way back into that? Or do you have other things in your life where that's relatable?
So I was a Giants fan growing up, and lived and died with every pitch. And then once I started writing about baseball for a living, without wanting to, I quit caring all that much because I didn't want to work all day writing about baseball and then go home and watch baseball for fun. And so it wasn't that much fun for me, and it felt I sort of. The repetition of the sport, oh, it's another season, sort of became really clear to me. Oh, wait, they won the World Series. Oh, wait, they're starting another season. It just goes and goes and goes. There's all championships for everyone by the end, right? It's infinite. It doesn't matter. And so I did basically, you know, I quit mostly caring about any team or any long-term outcome. Every pitch that I watch, I root for an outcome. But it's weird things that make me root. Like I want to write a piece about just tracking my rooting for a week and why, because it's the weirdest things I'll root for. Like I'll root for like some guy to get a hit because it's the 7th inning and if 2 more guys get on, then Bryce Harper will bat in the 9th, and I like watching Bryce Harper. Or like I like that manager. I guess I'm rooting for him, you know. Right. And so I root. It's just saying, but I don't really care. You're right. I don't really care that much. And this was like a complete return to that. Like I cared more than anything in the world. Even though I knew that I was falling for the same trap that fans fall into. But you know, like what else? If you're gonna come out and do it, like why not, man? You don't want to do it, lose. Yeah. You know, no. Everybody was in a way, everybody was doing something that sucked. Like, it was a lot of work. It wasn't a lot of pay. It was just hot and dirty. And, you know, you could just be miserable for, like, days in a row. But you do it because you want to make something happen. And you can just feel like the opportunities to make something happen going away with every game. And so it starts to feel really important that things happen. I mean, to watch baseball and root desperately for every pitch was like a real gift. I'm really grateful for that. And I'm like, the season starts in 10 days, I think, and I'm going to listen every game because Tim's a great broadcaster and because I want the Stompers to win. And I'm almost like nervous. What if I don't care? What if it starts and I lose interest? I don't want to ever lose interest again. So I don't know how I'm going to react. I don't know how in game 63 if I'm still going to be like, Stompers start in 10 minutes. I hope that's how I'm going to be at the beginning, and I hope it stays. I want to be in love like that forever.
Yeah. I just want to ask the players, Babs and Sean, like, obviously there's 1 or 2 leagues above the Pacific Association, and I just wondered, yeah, I knew somebody had that. Like, throughout the season, and maybe there's like an answer that you should give or whatever, but you know, do you just have to play and just trust that if you're playing well enough and if things are going right, and if somebody sees you, like you'd have a chance to make a leap, or is there anything you can do as sort of your own representative or your own agent to sort of try to make that happen, to finagle something, to get somebody's ear, to get video in front of somebody, or you just have to have faith?
You can for sure network yourself. Know a lot of people that do that, to put themselves out there in a broader perspective. It really is complicated. It comes down to the team needing your position with your ability at a certain time, and everything just got to match up together for you to move forward. So it's like pieces got to fit. But yes, you can definitely network for yourself and get your name out there with video, like you said.
For me personally, it was about balancing wanting the team that I was currently on to succeed and wanting to move up myself. And I ended up just settling on, okay, let's do the best I can here. Let's win a championship, and if someone else sees me, that's great. That's what I'm looking for. But I didn't actually personally put myself out there. I just had the coaching staff and Sam Brown on my side, recording video and sending the places for me.
So I talked to Theo the first time I met him about chemistry and whether he thought the chemistry was more important or less important at this level. And I sort of hypothesized that it was more important because there's nothing that naturally brings these guys together. Like, most of them, they'll be gone the next year. They just met each other. They're playing for a championship that nobody will really notice, and they're really all playing to move up. None of them ultimately cares whether the team wins or loses. They care that they're not around for that championship because they want to be some higher level. That's what they're there for, and we all know that that's what they're there for. And so having anything that creates some feeling of mutual camaraderie can, replace that. And I don't know that this is true, but I sort of became convinced as the season went on that
they do, that what creates the chemistry is that they're all rooting for each other to get moved up, because in indie ball, it's all networks. And so you want your boys to go up so they can put your name in front of every other team, right? It's like basically this whole big crony system, and you're just waiting for your friends to crony you, you know? So like you really want to see guys do well so they get picked up. And yeah, I don't know if that was, I don't know if I'm right, and I don't know if I am, I don't know if it's ever conscious, but I think that's why there wasn't really the sense of envy that some guys were leaving and some guys were not. There really was like, it's been like, okay, now I have a friend in the Frontier, a friend in the Association, a friend in the Atlantic, and that's how spots get filled. Spots get filled when the shortstop gets hurt, and they don't know who to get, and some guy goes, I know a dude, and he can ball out. And so you gotta be that dude. Yeah.
So you guys have had a little while to think about it, and I was actually talking to Theo about this the other day, but in the grand scheme of things, from analytical standpoint, theoretical standpoint, what is the scale to how much it helps at the independent level compared to what you think it does at the major league level, where it seems like the microscope is growing ever greater year after year looking for new data?
Well, if you could really do what we did, I think for 5 years, the gulf between what we could do and what other independent league teams would be massive. Because, like, we talked about early on with Parker's ERA, right?
Yeah.
Even the very basic data that we had of like batting average and ERA, as soon as we looked at it, we realized, oh, this is all garbage stats too, because it's inputted wrong. The Pittsburgh guy is really bad at inputting stats. And so I was like, oh wow, Parker, who I hadn't met, our catcher, but I had heard that he was a good catcher. I'm like, oh, and he can pitch? Because he led the league in ERA the year before. And it turns out that somebody just put him in as a pitcher. Or like one day, somebody else came in, I don't remember who pitched, and they just wrote, it looks like Parker to me. And so now Parker's got an ERA. And so to be able to I mean, it really is like, it's not even, like I said, with Moneyball and with Billy Bean, what they were doing was nothing special. It was just that nobody else was doing even that. And so they had the first mover advantage. In Indie Ball, it'd be like doing that, except it's like 1925. And nobody's paying any attention at all. Not because they're idiots, not even because they don't care, just because the resources aren't there and it's a low priority. I feel like, just with what we had last year, I would love to take on Pacifics again for a full season, because we just know things that they don't know about. Like, we know things about them that they don't know about us. And I don't see how that could not be a big advantage.
Can you write those down for me?
I'll do my best. All the scouts are here, so my best too.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was wondering what was the most out of the box thing you were able to get Ben to eat?
I didn't get him to eat anything. He
More like we saw me.
Man.
His eating habits are pretty.
The mushrooms in the bag,
Yeah.
I think were the, well, that's the classic.
But he did that voluntarily. Like,
Yeah.
that was
All of it was voluntary. Right. I never saw him eat anything he didn't want to eat. But so the mushrooms in the bag was really like the foundation where we went, oh what? Because everybody's like, it's the first day of spring training, and I actually have brought almonds, cashews, and dried pineapple, and I'm kind of like hiding, because that's weird. And he pulls out a baggie with mushrooms. Like, he's actually got cremini, mushrooms. And he just starts popping them in his mouth. And it's like 1:30 in the afternoon, so they've been sweating all day. With a plastic bag in the sun. But my favorite thing was actually, my favorite food, like, I would love to go over to his house and just see what was in his fridge, because it wasn't just his eating habits that were weird, it was his shopping habits. He would go and, like, he would want spinach, And so he'd go and he'd get like 16 pounds of frozen spinach, and then he'd put it in his freezer and eat it till it was gone. Or he'd get like 35 pounds of chicken breast, and all he'd eat is chicken breast until it was gone. And so I would always go and look and see what was in his. One time it was I think it was missile pops. You know those like.
Yeah.
He just had gotten like 75 missile pops, and he never had another missile pop in his life. It was just one day that's what he wanted. But so I would always check, and one day his entire fridge was empty, except for this massive pizza box. And I was like, I will eat some of your pizza, thank you. And I open it up, and it's one crust. It's like this huge, it's like a 3 foot by 3 feet pizza box that he has kept in his fridge. The box is in the fridge to house one pizza crust that he's going to eat later. And it's not even like it was like all the crusts. Like if he was discarding the crust as he went, then I would think, oh, he doesn't like the crust. He ate them all, he doesn't like the crust, and then he just forgot to throw the box away. But it was one, which means he was saving it. He eats the crust. So, yeah.
You specifically mentioned the cold beans out of a can.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
I thought that was strange at first, but now hearing this, that's...
Yeah. No, one time I went in the middle of a game to his house to get the radar gun, and there was an open, empty can of cannellini beans with a spoon in it that he had eaten cold. So there's actually more to this story. But so the thing that, like, his house was dark and he wasn't expecting me to go in there. So I sort of feel like it's like he had like, I don't know, like it's like his parents had gone out of town and then, come home early before he had a chance to clean up the evidence. Like, he didn't expect me to see the beans, So I felt like I'd really seen it. So I tweet like a picture of the beans, and he goes, those actually weren't my beans. I go, oh, geez, what? He goes, yeah, no, Jesse had been eating them. Jesse's girlfriend. I go, oh, I feel bad. He goes, I mean, I do that too.
The right girl.
Yeah. Jesse doesn't seem like the cold beans out of a can type.
No, maybe like boil them a little bit. Hard boiled. Sophisticated.
If you start eating a burrito in the middle,
Yeah.
do you go all the way through?
You do.
But then you've just got two smaller burritos. You start in the middle again.
You do. Yeah. So it's what it is. It's like you're very slowly squeezing an accordion. So every time you take a bite, you squeeze it together, and so you constantly are biting. It's like It's all the genius of it is that it's like you get a new burrito every time.
Yeah.
It's every bite's the first bite into a new burrito.
Wait, it doesn't involve a fork and knife?
No fork and knife. Yeah.
I thought you
bites
like a steak.
Yeah. No, bites right into it. And squeezes it together. Yeah. Yeah. I saw around that time. I saw like a Chinese acrobat who would do. He had like these 2 blocks and then a 3rd block, and he would. I think he had like 2 blocks and like 50 or whatever, but he would juggle these ones in the middle, and he would kind of keep them together with the 2 on the outside, like they were exerting pressure from it. So I don't know how to describe it. That's how I always feel about Ben's burrito. He's providing like outer support beams for it. So it does stay together. He did it without me. I didn't even notice really until he was pretty much done. He did it without. Weird direction. More questions about Ben's eating.
Without him to defend himself.
Alright. Are we out? We're out.
So anyone who doesn't already have a copy of the Only Rules, it has some work. We have them here available here at the store. I think there may be 1, maybe 2 copies left of Semi's prospectus as well. And then feel free to come on up and have a little one-on-one time with your book signing. Once again, thank you all so much for coming. Have a great night.